Reconnect and heal today. Welcome to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf.
Hello and welcome to Love Never Dies. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, founder of AskDrLove.com, the web's first relationship advice site since 1995. I'm so happy to bring you the new Love Never Dies radio show here on the Dream Vision 7 radio network, which broadcasts live every second and fourth Sunday on WMEX 1510 AM Boston. For the past 2.5 years, the Love Never Dies show has been the most listened to hour on the Hay House Radio Network. And now Love Never Dies can only be heard on the Dream Vision 7 radio network. The Love Never Dies show also airs every Wednesday and Thursday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. on Dream Vision 7 online radio network, which is in 136 countries. If you're listening to the show live tonight and you have a question for me, or better yet, if you'd like me to help you begin your own dialogue with the departed, I'd love you to call me live at 866-338-9663. That's 866-338-9663 from the U.S. and Canada. And if you're listening from Europe, you can call in using Skype. The Love Never Dies show is based on my #1 international best-selling book, Love Never Dies, which is now in 34 languages. Love Never Dies shares the story of my spiritual reconnection with my beloved deceased husband, internationally renowned former Jesuit priest, Émile Jean Pain. Jean's astonishing after-death manifestations prove to me that our relationships aren't meant to end in bodily death. And so I created my trans-dimensional grief resolution method that brings my acclaimed conflict resolution methods to the world of after-death communication. And the result is an unprecedented new method that offers you the first vehicle for not only reconnecting, which is the only way to end your sorrow, but also my method enables you to make peace with your loved ones in spirit. Now, as you're starting to realize, I always begin the show by sharing Jean's latest manifestations, because he told me right after he left his body, Jamie, tell our story. Let our love shine like a torch that lights the path for others. This means that Jean's manifestations aren't just meant for me. They're meant for you, too. They're meant to let you know that your loved ones in spirit are here with you, too. They're just waiting for you to learn how to open yourself up and let them back in. And that's what I'm here to teach you how to do. The first manifestation happened this week during my Tuesday night online coaches training group. I was talking about a conversation I had with one of today's top marketing experts. And he was saying that Jean's extreme manifestations might actually turn some people away, especially if they haven't already had an obvious communication from their loved one. They might be inclined to think, well, this can't happen for me. So the marketer said to me that when you're doing public talks, you should only pick one example of Jean's manifestations and make that example something that everyone can relate to. So as I was telling my coaches what the marketer said, I said he thinks a manifestation that's vanilla is the right thing to choose. As soon as I said the word vanilla, I looked at my thumbnail image on the computer screen, and my entire face became vanilla colored. My whole face went away, and it just looked like a vanilla ice cream scoop. And all my coaches saw this, and we laughed. And that example in and of itself is far from a vanilla manifestation. Jean has quite the sense of humor. Now, the next day, while I was meeting with my new Love Club group, what a beautiful group that is, I was working with one of the members who's named Trudy. She was grieving the disappearance of a friend who was on a vacation in Africa. And Trudy said, "We need to know what happened to you." In Trudy's dialogue, we instantly reconnected to her friend, and I, along with another Love Club member, saw that Trudy's friend had slipped off the edge of a mountain. That's what she was showing us. So Trudy dialogued with her friend, and very quickly her tears subsided and she felt lighter. And her friend kept reassuring her that she was fine now and that Trudy need not worry. And through thought induction, her friend even conveyed to me a funny joke that she was making. And I said, her humor is black humor. And Trudy laughed, and she said, she's black. So we were all laughing, including Trudy. And then suddenly, I saw Trudy do something so tragic. She started to cry all over again. She began talking about how bad it must have been for her friend, how much pain she must have suffered. In other words, Trudy left the current moment in which we were all rejoicing in the reconnection to return to the sad past, and she resumed agonizing over her friend's previous pain. Now, this sad place that she returned to within herself had nothing to do with where her friend was at now. And I said to Trudy that she brought the shadow of grief back upon herself. As soon as I said this, Trudy's entire face became blacked out in total shadow. But the rest of her thumbnail image was properly illuminated, and I knew that the shadow was a confirmation from Spirit that I was on the money with Trudy. Everyone, including Trudy, saw this manifestation. So I asked Trudy, why does she put herself back into despair since her friend isn't in pain now and she keeps telling Trudy she's fine? Trudy was clueless as to why she did this. And at that moment, I realized Trudy does what a lot of people who have been abused or abandoned in childhood do. Trudy brought herself back to an earlier point of suffering because as a formerly abused child, she's very accustomed to being in pain. So her unconscious mind returns her again and again to that familiar, emotionally painful, suffering place. Now, why would she do that? Because we're all creatures of habit, and familiar pain is preferable to the unknown. There's actually a name for this mechanism. It's called the status quo resistance. And all humans have a natural tendency to maintain the emotional status quo. Now, you can see that this pattern is going to complicate any grief Trudy suffers, because instead of staying in the moment and sustaining the reconnection and the joy that comes with reconnecting, her mind is always returning her to the sad and painful emotional place that she knows and is comfortable with. So it's a good thing that she's with me in the Love Club, because we're going to have 6 months to work together to resolve this very deep-seated psychological pattern that I also call the battered child syndrome. And it's a very depressive mindset that causes so many formerly abused people to keep returning to the depressed mind state. But what's really tragic is how this tendency compounds grief and makes it that much harder for you to reconnect. Later in the group, I saw the same thing happen with another member of the Love Club. When your psyche keeps returning to the empty well place inside yourself, you aren't able to receive the joy that reconnecting brings, and your grief just goes on and on. So I started thinking again about the marketer's wish for me to not tell the full details about Jean's manifestations, for fear that others who've never received the same kinds of signs and communications that I receive will feel our transdimensional grief resolution method won't work for them. And then the connection hit me like a ton of bricks. I realized that there are 2 ways to look at what's possible. If you have a history of deprivation, abandonment, or abuse, and you're offered the chance to grab hold of the brass ring and learn to reconnect, your mind may do what Trudy's mind did, and you may very well go to the sad, depressed, empty well emotional orphan place and say to yourself, I've never gotten these kinds of signs. This can't work for me. And you'll even overlook and dismiss the signs and dismiss the communications that you're getting on a daily basis. Or you can reach for the brass ring and allow yourself to receive the love that awaits you in the reconnection. That's why Jean told me right after he left his body, tell our story, let our love shine like a torch that lights the path for others. It was his words that led me to create our transdimensional grief resolution method, so that Jean and I can teach you how to reconnect too. And you can do this. I'll never forget my coach, Judith, who for so many months was angry with me. And she was telling me, this doesn't work. I can't do it. I'm not getting anything from Spirit. Now, Judith's anger was blocking her from receiving from Spirit. She has felt so emotionally deprived by her parents that she herself was stuck in the familiar place of hurt, sadness, and anger. Essentially, her ongoing inability to receive the reconnection was a veiled, unconscious way of venting her anger at her parents. Remaining disconnected enabled her to continue her accusation against her parents. She was essentially saying to them, "You weren't there for me when I was young, and you still aren't there for me." And of course, some of that anger spilled over onto me. I was depriving her too. I wasn't helping her to reconnect. Now, the breakthrough for Judith came when she was willing to simply own the hurt that was beneath her anger and dialogue with her parents about how hurt and cheated and deprived she felt as a kid. That's when the breakthrough came for Judith. Once she accepted her pain and talked about it with her parents, her door opened. She felt her parents' understanding and their love, and her anger vaporized, and she resolved her unfinished business with them. And now she feels so filled with joy and love, and she's totally open to receiving not only her parents' signs and communications and manifestations, but she's also completely open to receiving the messages and the manifestations from other coaches and clients' loved ones in Spirit. So I want you to ask yourself if your own unfinished business may be keeping you stuck in the belief that you can't reconnect as an unconscious way of keeping you in the familiar empty place. And now I want to give you a choice. You can stay with the familiar, or you can allow Jean's manifestations to shine like a torch that lights your path back to your loved ones in Spirit. That's your choice. Now, I have one more really neat manifestation to share with you. On Saturday morning, soon after I awoke, Jean told me, go to Vassar College Art Gallery. And he said, there's someone there I want you to meet. I thought, huh? I haven't been at that gallery in 10 years. Actually, Jean took me there for my birthday in July 10 years ago, just prior to our final trip to Italy. Well, of course, I obeyed his message. And sure enough, as I was looking at the current exhibit of the Neapolitan painter Francesco de Mura, a man walked up to me and he began a conversation about the painting I was looking at. And then out of nowhere he said, I always go everywhere alone because it's better than being with a crazy person. I thought, that's some opening line. So I told him I'm known as Dr. Love, and I always say there are worse things than loneliness, like settling for a bad relationship. And I asked him why he's alone all the time. And he told me he's a widower of 8 years, and his wife left her body from a rapidly growing breast cancer. So we had a chat and discovered that we have the exact same hobbies. He loves classical music, antiquing and collecting, and driving in the country and finding hidden streams and waterfalls. It was like I was looking at myself in the mirror, and it was like I was looking at Jean, because Jean loved the same things too. So Jean led me to a playmate. Now, the point of this story is you have to always listen to that tiny little voice inside your head, and you have to always listen to that pulling sensation that tells you that you have to go somewhere. That voice, that pull, is going to make no sense to you, but you have to listen, because that is one of the many ways that your loved ones in Spirit are attempting to guide you in order to bring you more joy, more richness, and more prosperity. So this is what our reconnection, this is what our transdimensional grief resolution method is all about, helping you open yourself to the reconnection. In this reconnection, your tears of grief vaporize. They are replaced with such abundant joy, such abundant love, because your loved ones in Spirit are one with God, and God is love. And when you tap into that reconnection with your loved ones, you are receiving that endless well of love that awaits you. And with that reconnection also comes an incredible richness and a prosperity on every level: mind, body, spirit, and emotional healing and prosperity, and financial prosperity too. All right, so we're going to take a brief break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about whether you're carrying attitudes that block your ability to reconnect with your loved ones in spirit. Be back with you in a moment.
Love Never Dies is now on the Dream Vision 7 radio network every second and fourth Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Dr. Jamie Turndorf, a.k.a. Dr. Love, is the #1 international best-selling author of Love Never Dies, How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased. If you're grieving the loss of a loved one, tune in to find out how to reconnect and heal any unfinished business using Dr. Turndorf's groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique. This show is for you, the listener, and Dr. Turndorf wants to hear from you. Call 866-338-9663 or 617-237-1234.
Take a journey to a place of the divine love within with Deborah Beauvais on the Love by Intuition Show every first and third Sunday, 9 to 10 p.m. Our message is love in the purest form. The light within us all is a guide to recall our beginning, to learn to love self and humankind, to feel the higher power of our own divinity. To attract love, one needs to be love. Every first and third Sunday from 9 to 10 p.m., all part of the Dream Vision 7 radio network. What if everything that you've been taught about who you are and what life is has been untrue? Join Deborah Laval, host of Living in Quantum Love, where she'll explore and dissect the limiting beliefs and wrong understandings that have only served to keep us not only separate from one another, but from our own selves. Living in Quantum Love can be heard every third Sunday of the month at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Dream Vision 7 radio network. Join Deborah and take a leap to freedom.
Your soul has the power to help you realize greater self-love, self-respect, and self-worth. Psychic medium John Holland and near-death survivor Anita Morjani can help you explore your relationship to your soul and its role in all areas of your life. Join them for a weekend workshop at the Omega Institute, June 16th through the 18th, located in Rhinebeck, New York, just 90 miles north of New York City. Omega's natural environment and quiet pace allow for extraordinary experiences to unfold. Learn more at eomega.org or call 877-944-2002. That's 877-944-2002.
Join Dr. Bernie Siegel on Mind Health Matters every first Sunday at 8 p.m., all part of the Dream Vision 7 radio network. Bernie will draw from his inspirational personal journey, offering us special nuggets of his sacred wisdom. Listen in as Bernie reminds us to be fully engaged in life.
In a single moment, your life can change. Join Marianne Pastana, host of Moments with Marianne, for a transformative hour of leaders in their field, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Tune in to experience Moments with Marianne every second Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, all part of the Dream Vision 7 radio network. Don't miss this. And remember, make every moment count.
You're listening to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. If you yearn to get along better with your life partner or spouse, friends, family members, and even coworkers, Dr. Turndorf's book, Kiss Your Fights Goodbye, Dr. Love's 10 Simple Steps to Cooling Conflict and Rekindling Your Relationship, shows you how to turn conflict into connection for a lifetime of lasting love. Find out more about Kiss Your Fights Goodbye at AskDrLove.com. This is Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. This show is for you, the listener. If you're listening in real time, you can speak to Dr. Turndorf live by calling toll-free from the U.S. and Canada at 866-338-9663. Once again, here's Dr. Turndorf. Love Never Dies is now on the Dream Vision 7 radio network every second and fourth Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Dr. Jamie Turndorf, aka Dr. Love, is the #1 international best-selling author of Love Never Dies: How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased. If you're grieving the loss of a loved one, tune in to find out how to reconnect and heal any unfinished business using Dr. Turndorf's groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique. This show is for you, the listener, and Dr. Turndorf wants to hear from you. Call 866-338-9663 or 617-237-1234.
Welcome back to Love Never Dies Radio. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and tonight I'm going to talk with you more about the massively wrong attitudes that block your reconnection with spirit and keep you stuck in grief and keep you preventing yourself from experiencing the prosperity that can only come from reconnecting. So over the past 10 years that I've been working with the bereaved and helping them to reconnect with their loved ones, I've discovered that there are so many common attitudes and beliefs that so many of us have in response to our suffering, and the attitudes that we have around our suffering actually block our ability to reconnect. So I want you to talk a little bit more about the role that suffering plays in your life. Talk to yourself about it. I'm going to start the conversation with you, and then I want you to talk to yourself about what I've said. Because I want you to start to talk to yourself about the fact that suffering plays a very vital role in your life, and it's actually linked to your spiritual development. And having the right perspective about suffering is really going to help you not fall prey to the feelings of bitterness and sadness and hopelessness that bog down most grieving people. These negative feelings deadbolt your heart, and they prevent you from receiving the boundless love and prosperity that your loved ones in spirit are yearning to bring you. So I want to take a little while to offer you an overview of the messages that Jean shared with me regarding suffering. When you embrace these truths, it's going to help you to open your heart. It's going to help you to reconnect. And as I said, that's the only way you're going to end the pain of grief. So the first thing I want to say to you is, spirit can't prevent your struggles. Now, this is a big attitude readjustment. Now, Jean showed me very early on that he's always holding me when I have pain. But he's also shown me he can't bundle me in bubble wrap or stop me from experiencing the struggles that are an integral part of my journey. Now, I know it's hard to accept, but our personal growth and our spiritual development often require us to experience custom-tailored trials that are designed to teach us specific spiritual lessons. So when you can't pray your way out of a tight spot, and when your loved ones in spirit can't remove the challenge, it's probably because life is happening to you just the way it's meant to. So when desperate measures to wiggle out of a tight spot fail, instead of falling into a state of bitterness or despair, I want you to keep in mind that you may be encountering a spiritual lesson in disguise. Now, in my case, I've struggled my entire life with uncontrollable weight issues, and the struggle is really my spiritual primer. It's teaching me that I have to surrender the illusion of control and accept that I don't have power over many things. And I'm a vain and I'm a very driven person, and for me, surrendering has been the hardest reality for me to accept. So it makes sense that this is the custom-tailored trial that I would be given. Now, also, the next thing I want you to readjust in your attitude repertoire is the notion that surrendering the illusion of control is important to your spiritual development, that the surrender of the illusion of control is the soil of your spiritual growth. Now, I discovered the hard way. When we're smacked by the tsunamis of life, we're being asked to bow to forces greater than ourselves. Physical and emotional suffering, including grief, come to break down our defenses, and our souls have to be open in order for us to hear God in spirit. So when really sad things happen, you can either become bitter and petulant and mad at God, or you can view these trials as the gift that brings you closer to God and the spirit realm. It's said that the heart has to be broken again and again in order to be finally open. So only when your heart is open can you hear God and spirit calling you to perfect your ability to love others better. Now, here's another role that suffering plays. It teaches us gratitude. Now, I know this sounds counterintuitive, but stay with me. The suffering that life brings helps us to appreciate the light. We can't appreciate the light if we never see the darkness. How can you know joy except by contrast? So when you suffer, you're being taught to appreciate the simple gratitude that comes when pain stops. So remember, you can't appreciate the light without living in some darkness. Now also, suffering teaches you empathy for others. My housekeeper said to me, her name's Donna, she says that I'm kinder since Jean left his body. So great pain enables you to empathize with others who suffer. Undergoing your own trials trains you to be more godlike and more loving and more able to understand and empathize and connect to others in their pain. Now here's another one. Suffering means you are God's chosen. Those who grieve, as well as the sick, the dying, the disabled, those who emotionally suffer are actually God's chosen ones. Those who suffer are sacrificial lambs sent by God to instill a sense of gratitude in other people. And those who suffer are chosen to spark others to fulfill our universal mission on earth, which is to be more godlike, kinder, more loving, more empathic, and more giving. So in other words, to grow as a spiritual being. So when a sufferer receives your kindness, that person is also receiving God's blessing. So in this way, both the giver and the receiver are blessed. Now, those who suffer the most are God's agents in even another way. So think about the fact, I always use this analogy of the percentage of unemployment that's built into the capitalist economy. So people who don't work are serving society by keeping things churning along. That's because economists say the capitalist economy can't function with a 100% employment rate. So human suffering works in a similar way. When we suffer, we're being chosen to serve humanity. Now, I know this is a very unusual perspective, but just stay with me. When we see someone in pain, we're being invited to stop feeling sorry for ourselves and give thanks for the problems we have that pale in comparison. Another person's difficulty reminds us that we could have it much worse. Now, a spiritual friend of mine said to me, I don't like the idea of taking solace in another person's suffering. Now, I'm not saying you should be smug or superior and sit back and rest on your emotional laurels. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying another person's distress is an invitation to get out of yourself and focus on someone else, to stop dwelling on your own worries and instead do whatever you can to make life better for someone who is worse off than you are. So just remember, when you throw yourself a pity party, there's always someone out there who has it worse and who desperately needs your prayers and your assistance. Now also, here's another attitude adjustment. When you suffer, you're becoming closer to God. So when you're in your darkest moments, when you're in terrible pain, when you're frightened, you're feeling completely forsaken by God and Spirit, it's so easy to fall into a pit of despair. But in reality, as difficult as it is to believe, it's at these times that we're actually closest to God. Now, why, you're thinking, why is that? Well, think about when a parent teaches a child a tough lesson. It's Spirit that stands beside you and supports you even as it puts a tough lesson in front of you. So in reality, suffering is a sign of God's presence, not absence. So when you look at your suffering in this way, you can actually feel grateful for the time God devotes to helping you grow spiritually. So remember, each trial you face is a spiritual lesson in disguise. So you can feel like a victim, and you can become depressed and turn your back on spirit, or you can remind yourself that everything happens for a reason. And when you approach challenges with this attitude, you're going to naturally ask yourself what your current difficulty is teaching you and how you can share this lesson with others to make the world a better place. Now, here's another attitude shift for you. You're receiving what you need at each moment. Now, I know you've heard that saying, God never gives you more than you can handle. And I know that statement is designed to help people weather tough times, but I think that statement needs to be revised. We aren't supposed to white-knuckle our way through life. When we have a hard time, we're supposed to open our hearts, eyes, and ears and decipher what the hard time is teaching us. We're given exactly what we need in order to complete our spiritual development. So when life is painful, think of it as spiritual growing pains, or that hair is being put on your spiritual chest, okay? Now here's another one. This is another attitude adjustment for you. Tough times are testing your faith. It's really easy to have faith during the good times, but can you keep the faith and not give up hope even when you're lost in the desert? Can you keep believing that your loved ones and God are with you even when you feel utterly alone and forsaken? Right after Jean left his body, I was given so many gifts, including health improvements and miraculous weight loss, gifts that instantly created faith in me that the afterlife and God do indeed exist. By granting me that gift of being thin, Jean instantly infused me with a deep faith, because no other earthly intervention had ever worked to help me lose weight, so faith came easily in the face of such a miracle. But then, as I talk about in the Love Never Dies book, I was forced to face a series of new trials. And at one point or another, each miracle was temporarily taken away. And each time I experienced a setback, I felt depressed, I felt terrified that Jean God had left me. I was being tested big time. For me, the greatest trial of all was regaining all the water weight. And my worst nightmare was upon me. Among other things, my face was being pushed to the max. I was being tested to see if I could keep my belief when the gifts were removed. Did I have sufficient trust in my heart that Jean and God were still present in my life despite the apparent evidence to the contrary? So it was then, in the heart of darkness, that I finally understood what Jean meant when he told me, as soon as he left his body, have faith in faith and trust in trust. Open your heart and believe. So naturally, when my body began holding water again, I felt forsaken. And this is a common reaction when life deals you a bad hand. And people will say, or maybe you've said yourself, how could God have done this to me? How could God have allowed this to happen? And when you say these things, you've forgotten that your trials are spiritual lessons in disguise. And in your hurt and your anger, you turn away from God and your loved ones in spirit. So when I realized this, I took a leap of faith, and I trusted that Jean was and is with me even in the darkest hours. And as soon as I made this shift in perspective, the fire of his love once again entered me fully, and I became my own self-love too. And at that moment, I began to melt away again. So that experience has led me to conclude that so many of our physical imbalances and diseases can often be a sign of spiritual dis-ease. So keep this in mind when a physical symptom doesn't resolve. Despite your affirmations, you may be in the presence of a spiritual lesson in disguise. Let me take a brief break, and I'll be back with you in a moment on Love Never Dies.
Love Never Dies is now on the Dream Vision 7 radio network every second and fourth Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Dr. Jamie Turndorf, aka Dr. Love, is the #1 international best-selling author of Love Never Dies: How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased. If you're grieving the loss of a loved one, tune in to find out how to reconnect and heal any unfinished business using Dr. Turndorf's groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique. This show is for you, the listener, and Dr. Turndorf wants to hear from you. Call 866-338-9663 or 617-237-1234.
When my beloved husband died of a bee sting, I wanted to die and join him. But his astonishing spirit manifestations proved to me that we don't die and our relationships aren't meant to end with bodily death. To honor his request that I let our love shine like a torch that lights the path for others, I wrote the #1 international bestseller, Love Never Dies, which tells our eternal love story and introduces my new method for reconnecting and making peace with the deceased. Hi, I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and I invite you to join me starting March 17th for my week-long visit to Unity St. Pete, Florida, where I will teach you how to say hello, not goodbye, to your loved ones in spirit, and even heal any unfinished business that remains. If you're ready to transform your grief to joy, visit AskDrLove.com/live events to find out more and register today. That's AskDrLove.com/live events.
Are you sick of fighting with your life partner or spouse? Do you want to rekindle the spark? Join #1 international best-selling author Dr. Jamie Turndorf at the Omega Institute May 12th through the 14th and discover her proven 3-step method for turning conflict into connection and love that lasts a lifetime and beyond. Visit AskDrLove.com/live events to find out more and register today. That's AskDrLove.com/live events.
Join us every second Sunday at 7 p.m. for Living on Purpose with Carolyn Romano, where we explore the mysteries, meaning, and sometimes madness of life. Let's figure out together the ways we're meant to serve and become the fullest expressions of our most authentic selves. Let's figure out together how to create lives of balance, abundance, and joy. This program is part of the Dream Vision 7 radio network.
You're listening to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. If you can't stop crying over the bodily loss of a loved one, Dr. Turndorf's #1 international bestseller, Love Never Dies: How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased, will show you how to toss out the tissues and transform your grief into joy using her groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique that enables you to reconnect and even heal unfinished business with those in spirit without the assistance of a medium, channeler, or psychic. Sign up for Dr. Love's free newsletter at AskDrLove.com and receive an exciting gift, a free excerpt of Love Never Dies. And now, back to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Welcome back to Love Never Dies. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, talking about the massively wrong attitudes that block your ability to reconnect with spirit, which is the reason why grief goes on and on and on, and the tears never end, because until we reconnect, our tears don't end. We may bury our grief in a shallow grave and think that our pain is over, but it's really not over. It's just like a scab that forms over a pussy infected part of the body. You rip the scab off, and it doesn't take much to rip it off, a memory, a holiday, a birthday, and all the pus starts coming back again. This is the pain of being disconnected. And we're not supposed to be disconnected, so grief doesn't end, and it won't end until you reconnect. So I was talking before the break about physical imbalances and diseases being a sign of spiritual dis-ease. And I wanted to caution you that if you have a physical symptom that doesn't resolve despite affirmations and visualizations and prayers, that may mean that you haven't yet mastered your spiritual lesson. And when your lesson is conquered, the symptom is often resolved. But in some cases, a symptom may not resolve during your earthly ride, and this isn't because you're being punished or because you aren't visualizing or doing your affirmations properly, and it isn't because you have bad karma or you're being punished for something you did in a past life. It's because there are cases in which a physical and emotional symptom isn't meant to be resolved because it may be required to help you fulfill your spiritual development. I always think about the case of Padre Pio, the saint who was plagued by sores on his body, and he begged God on a daily basis to relieve him of his agony, and nothing worked. And it was only on his deathbed, just prior to his exiting his body, that the sores magically healed. So my point is, there are so many mysteries, and because mysteries are of the divine, they can't be fully fathomed by the human mind. And in my case, Jean told me that I'm living in a human body, and my body is particularly sensitive to stress, and that means I'm always prone to gaining weight when life is tough. So perhaps my spiritual lesson is to let go and accept that which I don't want to accept. And at the same time, because my body is my barometer, my water weight can be a sign of my lost connection with the boundless love of spirit. And whenever I see myself starting to hold water, I know to take a look and see if I'm disconnected. And when I reconnect to spirit and Jean's love for me, which is my love for myself, my body melts again. So ultimately, the fire of love is the cure for what ails you. And having a greater awareness of your emotions and how you respond to suffering is going to allow you to better access spirit and the love waiting there for you. So let's talk a little bit about some of the other false beliefs that can block you from reconnecting. We've talked now about wrong attitudes. Now I want to talk about some false beliefs. And a big false belief that plagues so many people, and I'm sure you've heard this said to you, well, if you reconnect, you cannot move on. You can't move on. It's like saying to a mother who has a child, do you love your baby? Yes. Well, you can't have any more because you won't be able to love the baby you have if you have more. This is the same kind of thinking that people apply with regard to reconnecting with a loved one in spirit. Well, you can't move on, you can't love again if you also love your loved one in spirit. Well, this is untrue. Our hearts are made to love, and we have all the room in our hearts to love everyone that walks the earth plane and all our loved ones in the spirit plane. Now, another biggie is, well, they can't move on. You're holding them back from moving into the light. Talk about deifying our human egos. We don't hold anybody back from going anywhere because, anyway, where do we go? As Jean said, death is an illusion. There's a very thin veil between the realm where we are and the realm where they are, and it's thinner than we can ever imagine, and they're standing right here. They don't go anywhere. They don't move on. And in fact, their only purpose is to hold our hands and support us as we walk down that bumpy road called life and help us fulfill our destinies and heal us in body, mind, and emotion and help us have prosperity. This is their holy work. Jean said very early on, what else is there for me to do? It's my full-time occupation to love you. I hear this again and again from my patients and my coaches, loved ones in spirit. We are their holy work. That is what they do. They don't want to go on to anything else. Now, another one you may hear is, well, you're opening the door to the devil. Well, this is totally untrue as well. In fact, remember the Dalai Lama said that Jean was one of the 50 men of all time who was one with God. Jean never spoke about the devil. It didn't even exist. I don't believe the devil does exist. Maybe there are beings that are less evolved than other beings, but that's a far cry from the devil. Also, you have to remember, we're all born with an innate function that I call spiritual call blocking. You don't want to take a call, don't take a call. Set boundaries, don't accept a call. But above all, your loved ones in spirit are your gatekeepers. They're here to protect you against any less evolved presences, and I've never experienced anything of the kind, never has anyone else that I've ever helped to reconnect. Our loved ones in spirit are one with God, and they protect us, and they're our gatekeepers. Now, here's another good one. For a lot of people who believe in God and the afterlife, they may concede that the spirit lives on, but they believe that once you're in heaven, then you're out of reach. Once a spirit is in heaven, that spirit is out of reach. What, there are no cell towers in heaven? What, the signals from the earth plane are too weak to reach heaven? It's silly to apply these earthly concepts to this realm that we call the afterlife or heaven. So this last point really helps me transition into one of the most important things, and that is, in order for you to overcome the wrong attitudes and false beliefs that block your reconnection, it really helps you to understand some of the latest science that demonstrates why reconnecting with those in spirit is an innate, albeit uncultivated ability that we were all born to do. So I want to banish any lingering doubts or misconceptions that might really block your own process of reconnection. And it's really sad that so many of us are unaware that the greatest scientific minds have always believed, and they continue to believe, that reconnection is real because our consciousness lives on. It's called the survival of consciousness, and that beings in spirit can and do try to communicate with us. So after I wrote Love Never Dies, I discovered that there were so many important figures throughout history, from Socrates to Helen Keller, who reported having personal contact with spirits. Even Sigmund Freud wrote in 1921, he said, "If I had my life to live over again, I should devote myself to psychical research rather than to psychoanalysis." That's pretty amazing. And Carl Jung, the Swiss psychotherapist and the founder of analytical psychology, wrote extensively on this subject. Thomas Edison said in an interview in Scientific American, "It's reasonable to conclude that those who have left this earth would like to communicate with those they have left here, and I claim that it's possible to construct an apparatus that's going to be so delicate that if there are personalities in another existence or sphere who wish to get in touch with us, this apparatus will at least give them a better opportunity." And Edison was working on this apparatus when he left his body in 1931, and his efforts apparently continue. Now, even Einstein said in his introduction to Upton Sinclair's book on telepathy, Mental Radio, that science should take this phenomena seriously. So for decades, scientific research has been uncovering all kinds of evidence that human consciousness, or what some people call the soul, lives on after bodily departure. Maybe you've heard of Max Planck. He received the 1918 Nobel Prize. He was the father of quantum physics. And he said in The Observer, January 25th, 1931, that his experiments indicate that human consciousness pre-existed the universe. And he said, "I regard consciousness as fundamental, and I regard matter as derivative from consciousness. We can't get behind consciousness. Everything that we talk about and everything that we regard as existing postulates consciousness." Bohm, a protege of Einstein, one of the world's most respected quantum physicists, himself was a proponent of the holographic model because it explains various phenomena for which both traditional and quantum physics have no explanation. Stuart Hameroff and Deepak Chopra recently published an article called The Quantum Soul, a Scientific Hypothesis, and they say end-of-life brain activity supports the notion of a quantum basis for consciousness, which conceivably exists independent of biology in various scalar planes in space-time geometry. Michael Talbot, the author of The Holographic Universe, said, "Scientists are beginning to believe the universe itself is a kind of giant hologram, a splendidly detailed illusion." And Talbot goes on to tell us that the holographic model explains all the paranormal and mystical experiences from telepathy, precognition, mystical feelings of oneness with the universe, psychokinesis, that's the ability of the mind to move physical objects without anyone touching them. And he said it even explains death itself, which is nothing more than shifting of a person's consciousness from one level of the hologram of reality to another. Maybe you've heard of the brilliant Thomas Campbell. He spent 30 years studying the properties and boundaries and abilities of consciousness. And in his work, My Big TOE, Theory of Everything, that's what it's short for, he talks about his consciousness theory of everything, what he calls a virtual reality concept, and it explains how multiple realities exist simultaneously. And he talks about out-of-body experience, near-death experience, after-death communication, and aspects of lucid dreaming. I even came across an article at spiritscienceandmetaphysics.com called Scientists Claim That Quantum Theory Proves Consciousness Moves to Another Universe at Death. And it says in this article that we carry space and time around with us like turtles with shells. And Robert Lanza, voted the third most important scientist alive by the New York Times, said, when the shell comes off, he calls that space and time, we still exist. And he wrote a book called Biocentrism, How Life and Consciousness Are the Keys to Understanding the Nature of the Universe. And he says death of consciousness doesn't exist. I mean, I can go on and on and on. Essentially, we all know that we just move to a different frequency. We sort of turn to a different channel, and that channel, the afterlife, just vibrates at a different vibratory frequency than the earth plane. And it's like picking up a whole solid post-death reality that vibrates at a different rate. You know, Roberta Grimes, the afterlife researcher, talks about how 95% of our universe is comprised of what the physicists call dark matter or dark energy, because it just doesn't interact with material life. And this is where we believe our spirits go when we leave our bodies. So in essence, where Einstein says energy can't be destroyed, right? And we know now that 95% of our universe is dark matter or dark energy. To break it down very simply, when we shed the turtle shell of the body, the soul essence just moves into the dark matter. And so all I'm teaching you how to do is send and receive energetic communications to and from the spirit realm. Simple as that. So let me just tell you a couple of pieces of information that are important. For one thing, you know, the Calling book just came out in audio form. That's the never-before-revealed Vatican cover-up that Jean uncovered while doing research out of his Vatican-based research center. And if you like audiobooks, I read it in my voice. Also, I want to tell you, I'm going to be at Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith's Center, Rhythmia, October 22nd through 29th. This coming October, I'm going to be working with you and teaching you a trans-dimensional grief resolution method. And last, of course, but not least, I want to make sure that you know about the Love Club, where I'm working with the bereaved in a very beautiful, loving, and joyful group online. We're meeting twice a month for 6 months, and I'm helping you to reconnect and stay connected, because the group helps keep your vibration up. And in the group, everybody's learning how to perfect her or his ability to dialogue and hear spirit. And it's a really cool experience to watch other members of the Love Club begin to perfect their ability to hear spirit as they assist other members in their dialogues. And it's such a shot in the arm for every member to discover, wow, I got that right. Everybody heard what I heard. And that, of course, bolsters your confidence in your own ability to reconnect. And then, of course, I'm there to help guide you to heal any unfinished business that needs healing, which is what it's all about. And it's just such a lovely group. The combined energies of all the members just is a healing, loving space. So that's all I have for you tonight. I'm going to see you in two 2 Sundays. And in 2 Sundays from now, we're going to talk about how to recognize the signs that your loved ones are sending you. See you soon on Love Never Dies Radio.
You're listening to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. Is your heart still hurting over the bodily loss of your loved one? The reason is simple. We're not meant to be separated from those we love. And reconnecting is the only solution. But reconnecting and staying connected requires guidance. That's why Dr. Turndorf has created her exclusive members-only Love Club, a private, intimate, and loving online group where she'll personally guide you to reestablish your relationship with your loved one in spirit and even resolve any issues that remain. If you're ready to discover the healing and joy of reconnecting, visit AskDrLove.com/The Love Club and apply for a seat. But don't wait. To keep the group intimate, seats are limited. Visit AskDrLove.com/The Love Club and request to join today. That's AskDrLove.com/The Love Club.